listen, let's get to it. This conversation really centers around cement, but it's about the economy as a whole and why, after what, how many years has it been? 10 years since we all heard that seminal lecture on restoring the value of the city. 10 years down the line, why are we still using the same old strategies? Why are we still relying on other people's money to run our economy?
Well, interesting question, Kojo. Talking about issues to do with cement, we started this morning asking that question because the Trade and Industry Minister, K.T. Amon, had been talking about it. He had indicated that, look, there's a need to regulate it. He's talked about the fact that the manufacturers, for instance, he wanted them to have a meeting where the media will be present. They say they're not going to be in the meeting if the media is going to be present. And we've been having a conversation about it. We've talked about, for instance, the need for transparency. So we've asked questions about the build-up, for instance, of cement prices. And I was having a conversation with my very good friend, Kojo Akoto Boateng. He was telling me a lot of exciting things about Pozolana. Mind you, he's a building technologist, and so that's really his expertise. Apart from agribusiness, now agribusiness comes first, then building technology follows. So Kojo, once again, welcome. But I mean, we're having this conversation off record, but it's important we bring it out for everybody to understand why we need to probably look elsewhere when it comes to this whole conversation about cement prices.
Yeah, so I was listening to the conversation and I was like, maybe we should look at the broader picture and how we can build homes for Ghanaians, because we've always been saying that we have a 2 million deficit when it comes to housing, and the key things that go into housing, if you really look at it, you need your aggregates, which is sand and stone, which we do not import. Sand and stone are abundant in the country. In fact, the last analysis that we did on sand and stone and the industry is worth over $800 million. All these quarries mining stones from our hillsides and our mountains, all these businesses sand winning from across the country is about $800 million. And then you look at cement, which you have been discussing. Cement is a binding material. So once you bring your sand and you bring your stones, you need them to bond and become one rock or one monolithic structure. So you need cement. So it's a binding material. For your plastering, it's a binding material. For your tiling, it's a binding material. And then you need your electricals, you need your reinforcement and all those things. So it's very important we are talking about cement as a main element. But we also need to expand our focus if we really need to get this right. Look, the Building and Road Research Institute, which is under CSIR, which is located in Fumesa, in the Ashanti region, close to Kumasi, has for the past 30 years been working on alternative building materials. For example, Pozzolana cement. If we think that Portland cement is expensive and we are importing a lot of the things we need for Portland cement, the calcium oxides, the iron oxides, all the various components that make up clinker, which is so expensive, we should start looking inward and ask ourselves, with all the pozzolanic materials we have, that is clay and all those other things we have in the country, what can we do with Pozzolana cement to reduce our cement consumption by about 30-40%, our Portland cement consumption by about 30-40%. If you are reducing that, then you're also reducing the imports of the raw materials, right? Let's also look at limestone deposits and how we develop these limestone deposits for the Portland cement producers to use them. If you go to the Krobo areas, I know Gasem has a subsidiary that mines limestone in the area, which uses about 25%. About 25% of the limestone they used the last time I checked was being mined locally. How can we expand that production to ensure that we are mining more limestone to reduce our cost of imports of certain things into the country? These are some of the conversations that I expect the Trade Minister, Minister of Housing, and Ministry of Finance to start having, because we cannot run away from our housing needs. We cannot. Everything we do, so from road construction, every day you guys talk about how we need to have more roads. You have listeners calling in telling us about the nature of their roads, but you cannot construct a road without cement, because you need to build drains, you need to have culverts, you need to have curbs, you need to have all these things. And it's proven that some of these local materials you've developed, like pozzolana cement, can be a key ingredient in all this mix. So let's talk about cement prices as it is now, because right now we've not really invested in scaling the production of these things. But for the long-term future of our country, we need to start looking inward. And I'll give you an example, Kojo. If you go to the city of Jerusalem, for example, you see all the houses look similar on the exterior, because they are cutting Jerusalem stones from the mountains around Jerusalem. They have factories that cut, grade, and standardize these stones that are used to clad the exteriors of these houses. So what it would mean is that their import of paint would be reduced. Maybe for the interior, you'd buy paint to paint the interior. But for the exterior, so there's a character for the city. So the city has a character, number one. It's pleasing on the eye. And then there's local raw material use that reduces the forex that they need to bring certain things in.
It taps into the original problem, which is the substitution of import, right? And at the heart of that is this culture change resistance that we have with everything. Okay, you've experienced it with rice, look, the concept is so hard to shift from the Ghanaian mind that local is not inferior. Okay, so you suggest an alternative to cement, a completely workable one, but you know that our traditional construction firms and our traditional consumers of construction products will forever cling to what they know. Bricks never took in Ghana. So how do we go about ensuring that with a new idea, a suggestion of an alternative, we can also work on the mind of the consumer to understand that this is actually, in some cases, even better than what you're used to?
When you talk about traditional construction, let's forget the urban areas and start looking rural. What's the traditional construction? It's the Atakpame, right? They get clay. They have some timber. Sometimes it's bamboo. Sometimes it's any wood they find around. They build a kind of structure which will be the reinforcement, and then they just slap the clay on it. And when they finish, they roof it. Previously, they used to roof with straw. These days, because of modernization, they are roofing with alu zinc, and their homes are becoming hotter. Their homes are really becoming hotter.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at some of the work that KNUST has done, in fact, when we were in school, we did, God bless Mr. Haji, he took us through construction technology, and we learned about improved Atakpame building technology, where you'd have your concrete base as foundation, mount the Atakpame on it, roof it, and then plaster with mortar. It has climate control function, because you are using the clay in between, so it helps to regulate the temperature, and it's cheaper to do. Now, I'll give you some statistics. There are about 1,000 senior high schools in the country, and all these senior high schools have structures. There are about 12,000 basic schools in the country. If we assume that each of the basic schools have just a 6-classroom block, right? And we're consistently looking inward and using some of these local raw materials. So, for example, I do not expect the state to set up a factory, but the state could use policy to enable Kojo and Sons to invest in that space. So if the new policy is that for all our new classroom blocks you are building, you use this number of local raw materials. So use a certain quantity. So for your cement mix, do 20% pozzolana produced in Ghana, 80% Portland with a lot of imported materials, right? That alone creates a certain quantum of economy that Kojo can analyze, get his partners involved, maybe talk to a bank and get investment to invest in that space. Now on reinforcement, we import a lot of our steel materials, then we do the molding and the processing here. On reinforcement, if we had invested a lot in our timber resources, right? Because timber is one of the key things when it comes to construction, and you can use timber for all sorts of structural uses. Timber, bamboo, we could replace it, because our classrooms, they are not story buildings, they are just flat structures. If you go to even our CHIPS compounds, our clinics, our district hospitals, these are not huge structures that need a certain level of reinforcement. So for these structures, we can use some of these local things. We have consistently failed in looking at those things. Okay. And we've been import driven, such that everything that happens outside the country then becomes a burden for us.
Okay, Kojo, so if my technical skills lessons, if I can remember them clearly, we're looking at, when it comes to the Portland cement, we're looking at clinker, limestone, and I think gypsum.
Different types of oxides, calcium, you need calcium, you need iron oxide, you need...
The pozzolana that you talk about, what are the main materials that go into it?
It's also basically similar things. So the research that was done, if my memory serves me right, they used bauxite waste and all those kind of materials to produce, and then pozzolanic clay to produce. So it contains a bit more silica, the calciums, the oxides, and all those things. BRI can explain those things to you. But they did structural test of those things. We have buildings, demonstration villages built in this country that used advanced Atakpame building technology, that used a lot of these things, and they are still standing. Okay. If you go to KNUST, for example, there's a structure that sits close to the former College of Architecture and Planning, which is improved Atakpame building technology, and was plastered, and then they cut a certain section of the wall to show the Atakpame inside, for you to know that this building still looks modern, it functions well, everything, but this is how we did it. I believe once we start looking at some of these things, we will make progress. We cannot continue. I'll give you an example, Winston.
Yeah, but before you give me the example, actually, I just want to find it, because I know we set up this whole pozzolana cement factory somewhere, I think in the central region or so.
Somewhere in the central western region.
Yes. Yeah. What happened to it?
I honestly don't know what happened to it. I honestly don't know what happened to it. But importantly, if it was set up and was running, it meant that there had been some good work done, and we can review. It's the same thing with a lot of the things that happened. You know, sometimes when we set something up and for some reason we don't create the right environment for that to grow or the right structures for that to work, then we give up. I'll give you an example. Sugar. We import so much sugar, but in the 1960s we had the Ghana sugar projects that the World Bank and ADB funded. We were supposed to have Comenda, we were supposed to have Isuchari sugar factories. We set up infrastructure and all that. But because we didn't set up the whole system to run efficiently and productively, we lost out on all those things. Now we've given up on sugar. Our last investment in Comenda is there, it's rotten. And we are still importing sugar. And if tomorrow America, Russia, Ukraine, somebody decides to do their thing, it's just going to come back to bite us. But sugar is in everything that we eat. What I'm saying is that we have enough research, we have enough capacity, and we have enough opportunity within the country to look inward. And it shouldn't be lip service. Kojo, you mentioned rice earlier. Now we have capacity to produce a lot of rice. I expect that we use policy to drive the consumption of local rice. But I promise you, by December, the ministries, agencies, departments, corporate Ghana, all those people will be buying imported rice. They will all be buying imported rice. Look, last Easter, the Eid and all those things, I was monitoring the various politicians on Facebook and the donations they were making. And you could see that the things they were donating to people are just imported rice. You could see the labels on all these brands. But this person will come later and tell me that we should look inward, we should support the economy, and they are working for us. And you look, talk is cheap, especially in Ghana cities, right? And beyond the talk, we must do the things that will support the local economy the best way we can. We cannot say let's do this and tomorrow go and do some other thing. So Winston, there's opportunity in the country. It's big, it's vast. the most important things you need for construction, and I'll say again, the biggest bulk is sand and stone. If you are building a house, the bulk of the things, sand, stone. Then you get your binding material, you get your reinforcement, you get other things for cladding. Why have we moved from our traditional construction to now have glass buildings all over the city, all over the country? Which buildings, because of the way we are building them, need to be air conditioned throughout the day. So the power consumption is so high, it puts a lot of pressure on the grid, and we don't have enough power for other things. Who is thinking about all those things? I remember when we were growing up, at a point, our louvers were made of timber, solid, well-treated timber. Or you have your glass louver blades. If we had the Abosso glass factory, for example, working, a lot of the imports of glass into this country right now would have been curtailed. So the minister is talking about cement. But it's one part of the bigger conversation about construction and construction costs.
I like what you say about how policy can steer a lot of these things, and you're so right about it. There are examples all around the world. I mean, you go to Cambridge, okay, the city of Cambridge, and you don't choose which color to paint your house. You who are you? You can't decide which color you want to paint your house. There is a policy about what color houses should be in this section of the town, in that section, and you stick to it, otherwise you can't live there. So there are ways in which we can determine what the market does just by setting the right framework. But for some reason it looks like we are more interested in this Wild West approach, where everyone can just like we are what's it called, prospectors in the old country. We are all, cutting out our plot of land and doing what we like.
Yeah. So we really need, look, Kojo, I'll give you examples. We've spoken about cement. Let people who deal in reinforcement, that is iron rods, call you and tell you the increase in prices over the past 1 year. Just 1 year, you'll be shocked. Let those at the timber markets tell you the cost of timber. You'll be shocked. Even common bamboo. The last building projects I handled, I bought bamboo for 1.5 cedis or 2 cedis when I needed the very long ones for a higher span. I bought bamboo for 1 cedi 50 pesos or 2 cedis. The last time I asked, bamboo is now 4 cedis, 5 cedis. And this is within a period of 2 years. So if you look at 2 years and the increase in bamboo price over 100%, bamboo is a grass. Once you plant bamboo, you should have the bamboo shoot up and be ready in a year or two. And once you plant and you manage your bamboo plantations well, you are going to get bamboo all the time. There are companies here that are into forestry, like Miro Forestry and all these businesses planting large-scale forest. What has been our approach into even greening Ghana, right? And planting the right timber resources to support our infrastructure needs?
There's a lot to think about, Kojo. I'm glad you've been able to raise a bunch of these things with us.